Hello and welcome to our first lecture on Chapter 6 of Class 10 Science, Life Processes. What is life? How can you tell the difference between a living and non-living thing just by seeing it? From movement, right? Seeing if it breathes? Maybe a sleeping man would pass that test, but what about plants? Well, plants grow as you would say, cause we see them grow. But what if we can't see them move? Plants are still living. Scientifically, molecular movements are a necessity for life. But why? Well, that's because life requires order. All your cells, tissues, and organs are finely structured, but the environment keeps them breaking down. Thus, molecular movements are necessary to maintain these structures and sustain life. The processes which together form these maintenance jobs are called life processes. These life processes require energy, which comes from outside the body of the individual organism in the form of food, and the process of obtaining this energy from food is called nutrition. Additional raw materials are also required for growth. Since our bodies are carbon-based, the food that we consume is also carbon-based. These complex food sources need to be broken down or built up in the body and must be finally converted to a uniform source of energy that can be used for various life processes. Oxidizing reducing reactions are some of the most common chemical means to break down molecules. Living organisms use oxygen from outside the body and use it to break down the food sources for cellular needs through a process called respiration. In single-celled organisms, no specific organs for taking in food, exchange of gases, or removal of waste is needed because the entire surface of the organism is in contact with the environment. But this is not true for multicellular organisms, which have a larger body size and simply can't meet the requirements of all the cells by simple diffusion. In multicellular organisms, like ourselves, specialized tissues and organs perform specific functions. Due to this, their requirement of food and oxygen will also be different. Thus, a transportation system is required for carrying food and oxygen in desired amount from one place to another in the body. When chemical reactions use the carbon sources and oxygen for the energy production, they create byproducts which are not only useless but also may be harmful for the body. These waste byproducts are therefore needed to be removed from the body through a process called excretion. Again, the basic rules of body design in multicellular organisms are followed. A specialized tissue for excretion will be developed, which means that a transportation system will need to transport waste away from the cells to this excretory tissue. Having studied the necessity of various life processes, let's take them up one by one. Nutrition. To fulfill the requirement of energy and materials, different organisms utilize different ways. Some obtain them from inorganic sources in the form of carbon dioxide and water and are known as autotrophs, which include green plants and some bacteria. They use the process of photosynthesis, which forms carbohydrates and oxygen as end products and are utilized for providing energy to the plant. The whole process occurs in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll, which is a green-colored enzyme. Now plants grow rapidly and they need a lot of raw materials such as nitrogen, phosphorus, iron, and magnesium, which are taken up from the soil and acted upon by the microorganisms. Plants use nitrogen in the form of inorganic nitrates or nitrites for the synthesis of proteins and other compounds. Other organisms utilize complex substances which are broken down into simpler ones using biocatalysts called enzymes. These organisms, known as heterotrophs, survive by depending directly or indirectly on the autotrophs and include animals and fungi. Humans are heterotrophs too. Heterotrophs have their own way of nutrition depending on the type and availability of the food material, which can be stationary such as grass or mobile such as a deer. Even how the food is accessed and processed can be quite different. Some organisms break down the food material outside the body and then absorb it. Examples include fungi like bread molds, yeast, and mushrooms. Others take in the whole material and break it down inside their bodies. Some organisms derive nutrition from plants or animals without killing them. They are known as parasites. Examples include cusqueta, also known as amarbale, ticks, lice, leeches, and tapeworms. Let us roll back to the autotrophic nutrition and see what actually happens during the process of photosynthesis. Firstly, light energy in the form of sunlight is absorbed by the chlorophyll in green plants. Next, The light energy gets converted into chemical energy and water molecules splits into hydrogen and oxygen. Finally, the reduction of carbon dioxide to carbohydrate occurs. Now, depending on the environment and availability of the sunlight, these three processes may occur at different time and in different order. But this is just an overview of photosynthesis. Let's look at how plants do it. Green leaves get their color from the cell organelles known as chloroplasts, which contain chlorophyll. It is here that the light energy is converted to chemical energy in the form of ATP molecules along with the photolysis of water molecules. Now, since the food and the way it is obtained differ, the digestive system is also different in various organisms. Single-celled organisms form specialized body parts for the same purpose. For example, amoeba has temporary finger-like extensions of the cell surface known as pseudopodia, which fuse over the food particle forming a food vacuole in which complex substances are broken down into simpler ones and then diffuse into the cytoplasm. The remaining undigested material is moved out of the surface of the cell and thrown out. In paramecium, which is also a unicellular organism, the cell has definite shape and the food is taken at a specific spot by the movement of cilia, which covers the entire surface of the cell. Talking about ourselves, we human beings have a long alimentary canal consisting of specialized regions and extending from the mouth to the anus. While eating, we chew the food with our tongue and teeth, and as our mouth waters, the food gets mixed with saliva, which is secreted by the salivary glands and contains a biocatalyst called salivary amylase that breaks down starch, which is a complex molecule, to give simple sugar. The lining of the canal has muscles that contract rhythmically in order to push the food forward in a regulated manner through peristaltic movements which occur all along the gut. Through the food pipe or the esophagus, the food is taken to the stomach. The stomach is a large organ which expands when food enters it. The muscular walls of the stomach help in mixing the food thoroughly with more digestive juices. The gastric glands present in the walls of the stomach release hydrochloric acid, a protein digesting enzyme called pepsin, and mucus. The hydrochloric acid creates an acidic medium which facilitates the action of the enzyme pepsin. The mucus protects the inner lining of the stomach from the action of the acid under normal conditions. Adults often complain about acidity, which happens due to the overproduction of hydrochloric acid due to the disturbances in the eating patterns. The food exits from the stomach in small amounts controlled by the sphincter muscle into the small intestine. It has now entered the longest part of the alimentary canal, which is fitted into a compact space because of extensive coiling. The length of the small intestine differs in various animals depending on the food they eat. Herbivores eating grass need a longer small intestine to allow the cellulose to be digested. Meat is easier to digest, hence carnivores like tigers have a shorter small intestine. The small intestine receives the secretions of the liver and pancreas. The food coming from the stomach is acidic and has to be made alkaline for the pancreatic enzymes to act. Bile juice from the liver accomplish this task in addition to acting on fats. Fats are present in the intestine in the form of large globules, which make it difficult for enzymes to act on them. Bile salts break them down into smaller globules, increasing the efficiency of enzyme action. The pancreas secretes pancreatic juice, which contains enzymes like trypsin for digesting the proteins and lipase for breaking down emulsified fats. The walls of the small intestine contain glands which secrete intestinal juice. The enzymes present in it finally convert the proteins into amino acids, complex carbohydrates into glucose, and fats into fatty acids and glycerol. The digested food is then absorbed by the walls of the intestine. The inner lining of the small intestine has numerous finger-like projections called villi, which increase the surface area for absorption. The villi are richly supplied with blood vessels which take the absorbed food to each and every cell of the body, where it is utilized for obtaining energy, building up new tissues, and repair of old tissues. The unabsorbed food is sent into the large intestine, where its walls absorb more water from the material, and rest of the material is removed from the body via the anus. The exit of this waste material is also regulated by an anal sphincter. You can get detailed notes on this chapter as well as practice NCERT and previous year questions
along with their solutions. You also get mind maps and many more at the EduRev mobile app and website to learn better and score more.